Online School Online Academy. I am from Faisalabad and I'm 10 years old. Today my AI session Today my AI session with ChatGPT. So my AI session start the AI session. So hi ChatGPT.
Hey there. How's it going? What can I do for you today?
Okay, so I found my ChatGPT session topic name is um, explore innovation solution will string with analytic and legal boundaries. So my first question is ChatGPT is the my first question is ChatGPT. If creatives stop working for 10 seconds, what could humanity invent to prepare for it?
That's a fascinating question. If AI were to stop working for a while, humanity would probably need to rely more on human intuition, creativity, and problem solving skills. We might also invent new tools or systems to help us adapt, like more robust offline capabilities or even better ways to ensure data privacy and security. It would definitely be an interesting challenge.
Okay, so my next question is just, what would a business model look like in a world where money doesn't exist?
Oh, that's a really cool thought experiment. In a world without money, a business model would likely be based on resource sharing, collaboration, and value creation for the community.
I'm sorry, but you've hit the daily limit for advanced voice. You can switch to standard now to keep chatting.
Okay. Okay, so my next question is the GPT. How could cities be designed if road didn't exist?
That's a great question. Without roads, cities would likely be designed around alternative forms of transportation, like canals, pedestrian paths, or even elevated walkways. We could also see more emphasis on green spaces and circular designs to reduce the need for long travel distances. In such a scenario, urban planning might focus more on compact, walkable areas with homes, workplaces, and entertainment all within close reach. How do you imagine cities might look in such a world?
Okay, so my next question is GPT. If failure become a legal requirement before assessing, how would you invite it differently?
That's an interesting concept. If failure were a legal requirement before assessing, it could be framed as a necessary step for growth and learning. The approach might be less about penalizing failure and more about structuring it into the process as an intentional part of development. For example, you could have failing stages where individuals or teams are required to try, learn from mistakes, and iterate before the final assessment. This could foster resilience and creative problem solving. How do you think such a system could change people's approach to success?
Okay, so my next question is if your Howard would education look like if there were no school or university? Six examples of human life.
Without schools or universities, education could shift towards a more experiential and community based model. It might rely heavily on apprenticeships, self directed learning, and mentorship. People could learn by doing, with more emphasis on practical skills, critical thinking, and collaborative problem solving. For example, individuals might learn trades or crafts through hands on experience or engage in local study groups where knowledge is shared informally. Life itself could become the classroom, with knowledge passed down through generations, often shaped by personal interests and the immediate needs of the community. What kind of learning approach do you think would emerge from this?
Okay, so my next question is what new sport? How would transformation involve if we are born with will instead of legs?
That's a fascinating thought. If humans were born with wheels instead of legs, communication might shift significantly. Language and translation could become more about shared mental or emotional understanding, as mobility would be less of a physical barrier. Instead of verbal language, we might rely more on telepathic communication or visual forms like sign language and symbols. Translation could also become more focused on interpreting thoughts and intentions, transcending traditional spoken languages. This could lead to a more interconnected world where understanding each other's minds and experiences is at the forefront. What do you think would be the biggest change in how we interact with each other?
Okay, so my next question is what new sport could exist in human beings?
That's an exciting question. If we imagine a new sport for humans, it could combine elements of teamwork, strategy, and physical or mental skill in ways we've never seen before. For example, it might involve virtual or augmented reality, where players have to navigate a mixed reality environment, using both their minds and physical movements to complete tasks. Another idea could be a sport that focuses on using environmental elements, like wind or water, where players harness natural forces for strategic advantage, blending athleticism with an understanding of nature. What kind of sport would you enjoy creating or watching?
Okay, so my next question is that if time could go backward on a day, on a week, how could business use that creativity?
If time could go backward, businesses would have an incredible opportunity to learn from their mistakes instantly and apply those lessons right away. They could analyze failed decisions or campaigns, adjust them, and try again, optimizing every move for better outcomes. In a week, businesses might take advantage of this by experimenting with new ideas, testing products in real time, and adjusting based on immediate feedback, essentially giving them unlimited chances to perfect strategies. This could lead to unprecedented innovation and efficiency, with a focus on rapid improvement. How do you think customers might feel if businesses could perfect things so quickly?
Okay, so my next question is what new invention could emerge if mirrors never existed?
Without mirrors, the concept of self awareness and reflection could be quite different. People might rely more on other senses like touch or sound to understand their appearance or emotions. The development of art, fashion, and even personal identity could shift to rely on other forms of representation, such as sculptures, paintings, or even communal feedback. Social interactions might focus more on how others perceive us instead of self reflection. This could lead to a world where external validation becomes even more important than internal self image. How do you think society's view of identity would change in such a world?
Okay, so my next question is if humans could only speak 100 words in their lifetime, what would you choose to say?
That's a thought provoking question. If humans could only speak 100 words in their lifetime, each word would need to be incredibly meaningful. I might choose words that express love, gratitude, and understanding, like I love you, thank you, and help. I would want to make sure the words reflect the most important moments and connections in life. It would also be essential to leave space for those words to be heard and felt deeply, rather than spoken casually. What would your 100 words be?
Okay,
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
okay, so my next question is if humans could float, how would architecture and city planning change?
If humans could float, architecture and city planning would undergo a huge transformation. Buildings might be designed to be lighter, more fluid, and even suspended in the air. Cities could incorporate floating platforms or structures, with roads becoming more like air paths for people to drift along. Vertical designs could become more common, with with homes, offices, and public spaces stacked or suspended in the air, reducing the need for traditional ground-based foundations. The concept of space would shift from horizontal planning to creating environments that offer freedom of movement in every direction. How do you imagine this would affect daily life in cities?
Okay, so my next question is the ChatGPT. How would society work if every role had to rotate every year? Each doctor
It
becomes
seems like your
artist.
question got cut off. Could you clarify what you mean by vade role? I'd love to dive into this concept with you.
Okay, so my next question is what industries would dominate if Earth had only 3 years of resources left?
If Earth only had 3 years left, industries related to survival, legacy, and preparation for the future would likely dominate. First, the tech and space industries would be heavily involved in efforts to find a way off the planet, perhaps focusing on space travel and colonization. Energy industries might shift to renewable sources as a last-ditch effort to sustain life. Emergency services, healthcare, and biotechnology would be at the forefront, focusing on human health, crisis management, and perhaps even attempting to extend life or adapt to new environments. Meanwhile, entertainment and media could shift to preserving human culture and history, offering a way to leave a lasting imprint for future generations. What industries do you think would emerge in this scenario?
Okay, so my next question is how would society work if humans could float?
If humans could float, society would likely adapt in some fascinating ways. For one, transportation would become much more fluid. Literally, people could float from place to place, eliminating the need for traditional vehicles or roads. Buildings might be designed to be more open and airy, with structures that allow for easy movement in all directions. Cities could have layers of floating platforms, interconnected by pathways that people glide along. Social dynamics could also change, as personal space and proximity might become more fluid, with people able to move freely without being constrained by gravity. How do you think this would change our daily routines?
Okay, so my next question is if humans float, what new inventions could emerge if humans never excited?
If humans could float, we might see some incredible inventions emerge to make the most of this new ability. For example, floating transportation devices like hoverboards or personal AirPods could become the norm, allowing for easy travel in all directions. We might also see floating homes or modular living spaces that adapt to the sky, reducing the need for traditional foundations and giving cities a more dynamic, three-dimensional layout. Tools and technology could evolve to help control or enhance the floating experience, like personal stabilizers to prevent drifting, or specialized clothing that enhances mobility. What kind of invention would you be most excited to see in such a world?
Oh yeah. So my next question is what if dream could be shared? How would this redefine privacy and creativity?
If dreams could be shared, it would revolutionize privacy and creativity in fascinating ways. On one hand, privacy might be significantly impacted, as people would no longer have complete control over their most personal thoughts and experiences. The line between personal and shared experiences would blur, and boundaries around what we keep private could shift. However, in terms of creativity, it could spark a whole new wave of innovation. Artists, writers, and creators might draw inspiration directly from the collective dreams of society, leading to unique collaborative projects. People could even explore shared dreamscapes, working together to co-create in a way that's never been possible before. How do you think society would balance the pros and cons of sharing dreams?
Oh yeah. Okay. So, my next question is How would justice system change if trials were judged by AI that learn from empathy?
If JavaScript systems were judged by AI that learns from impact, the approach to coding and software development could undergo a major shift. The AI would focus less on the traditional rules of syntax and more on the real world effectiveness and outcomes of the code. For instance, rather than strictly following predefined guidelines, the AI could evaluate how well the code performs in practical applications, learning from user interactions and system performance. This could lead to more adaptive and efficient coding practices, where the system continuously improves based on real world feedback. Over time, the AI could even suggest or write code that better aligns with user needs and the intended impact, rather than just technical accuracy. How do you think this would change how developers approach their work?
Oh yeah, okay. So my next question is, what if
I'm
humans?
glad that sparked your interest. It's
Yeah,
exciting
yeah,
to think about how AI could reshape the way we approach coding and
yes,
development. Do you think that
yes.
kind of AI-driven system could make software development more efficient, or might it create new challenges?
Yeah, okay. So my next question is, what if humans were allowed to switch life with someone for 1 week? How would society evolve?
If humans were allowed to switch lives with someone for 1 week, it could lead to a massive shift in empathy and understanding. People would gain first-hand experience of the struggles, joys, and challenges that others face, breaking down stereotypes and biases. This could lead to a society where people are more compassionate and open-minded, as they would truly understand different perspectives. Professionally, it might lead to a more collaborative environment, with people respecting each other's roles more. However, it could also disrupt social structures, as people might realize that they are not as satisfied with their current lives and push for change. How do you think this would impact personal relationships or career choices?
Oh yeah, okay. So my next question is, how would storytelling change if no one put in life in fiction?
It seems like your question got a little mixed up. Could you clarify what you mean by story link engine and how it relates to life infection? I'd love to help with a more detailed response.
Okay. So my next question is, if people had to wear masks showing their emotions, how would that affect relationships?
If people had to wear masks showing their emotions, it could have a profound impact on relationships. On one hand, it could make communication more transparent, as there would be no hiding feelings or intentions. This could lead to more honest and open interactions, as people could instantly understand how others are feeling. However, it could also take away some of the subtlety and nuance of social interactions, where nonverbal cues and facial expressions are often read in more complex ways. It might also create pressure for people to always display their emotions, even when they might prefer to keep them private. What do you think? Would this make relationships more genuine or more difficult?
Okay, so yeah, my next question is, how would the internet function if it was limited to 1 hour of access per day?
If the internet were limited to just 1 hour of records per day, it would drastically change how we interact online. People would likely prioritize their time, focusing on the most important information or interactions during that brief window. Social media, news, and entertainment might be condensed into fast, impactful moments, possibly shifting toward more concise, essential content. This could lead to more mindful, purposeful browsing, but it might also increase anxiety about missing out or not having enough time to access everything. Businesses and creators might focus on creating content that truly captures attention in that limited hour. How do you think people would adapt to such a time constraint?
Okay, so yeah, my next question is, if art to funds, how would art culture and life change?
If there were two separate funds, one for art and culture and the other for life essentials, it could create a dynamic shift in society. The Art and Culture Fund might spark a golden age of creativity, allowing artists, musicians, writers, and creators to thrive without financial constraints. This could lead to an explosion of new ideas, innovations, and cultural expressions. On the other hand, the Life Essentials Fund would ensure that everyone's basic needs, like food, shelter, and healthcare, are met. It could level the playing field, reduce inequality, and allow people to focus more on pursuing their passions and contributing to society. However, the challenge would be balancing the two funds to ensure neither art nor essential needs are underfunded. How do you think society would manage such an arrangement?
Okay, so yeah, my next question is how would education evolve if students could by only ask question, not receive direct question?
It sounds like you're asking about a way to encode information through asking questions rather than receiving direct answers. This could work by focusing on a questioning approach that encourages deeper thought and exploration. For instance, you could ask questions that lead to insights, prompt reflection, or guide others toward uncovering the answers themselves. This method encourages critical thinking and self-discovery, with the questions acting as a tool for uncovering knowledge or solving problems. For example, instead of asking, "What is the capital of France?" you might ask, "What city in Europe is known for its art, fashion, and culture?" The response could lead to a more meaningful understanding through the process of discovery. Does that sound like the kind of approach you had in mind?
Okay, so yeah, my next question is how would education evolve if everyone had to communicate in phone for one day? How would system adapt?
If everyone had to communicate via phone for one day, education systems would have to adapt quickly to accommodate this shift. For one, it might encourage a more structured and focused form of communication, as people would rely on text or voice calls instead of face to face interactions. Teachers and students would likely use messaging apps, emails, or voice notes to exchange information, which could lead to more organized communication, but might also challenge the fluidity of in person discussions. The system would need to find ways to maintain engagement, perhaps by using video calls for lectures or group discussions and instant messaging for assignments and feedback. It might also highlight the importance of digital literacy, teaching students how to communicate effectively and responsibly through phones. This could also encourage a more asynchronous learning model, where students can engage with material at their own pace and time, rather than being tied to a strict schedule. How do you think this would change the way people learn or interact in educational settings?
Oh yeah, okay. So my next question is, how would you marketing a product that melts after 5 minutes?
Marketing a product that melts after 5 minutes would definitely require some creativity and urgency. You could focus on the unique aspect of its limited time, positioning it as an exclusive, once in a lifetime experience. The marketing could emphasize how the product offers something that can't be replicated or enjoyed for long, making it a now or never kind of moment. You could create a sense of excitement and FOMO, fear of missing out, by marketing it as a special, time sensitive event, like limited edition items or flash sales. Maybe even make the melting process part of the experience, showcasing its transformation in an appealing way. For example, if it's a food product, you could highlight the rich, instant enjoyment, like a special treat that's perfect for the moment. Do you think this urgency driven marketing would work? What kind of product do you imagine it could be?
Yeah, okay. So my next question is, what if sleep become opinion? How would that impact global work-life balance?
If social resources became opinions, it would completely shift how people view and interact with resources like time, energy, and support in both personal and professional settings. Instead of universally agreed upon standards or resources, these would be seen as subjective, based on individual views and preferences. For work-life balance, this could create a more fragmented experience. Some might prioritize flexibility, while others could emphasize strict work hours, leading to
Okay, so my friend, my A session with ChatGPT time is over. So next episode for the A session. So bye bye, my friend and my brothers.